One thing is Mediterranean style of eating. By that we mean less processed foods, more unsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. Calcium is really important for building our bone stock and for our teeth. And when you are in your 30s and even younger, but particularly in your 30s, you begin to reach your maximal bone density. The amount of time that your food leaves your stomach and goes into your small intestines is called the gastric emptying time. But this is also what I want to say to people is that there are a range of helpful and healthy exercises, all the way from body weight exercise, which means no equipment. I can't run as fast as I did in my 20s. Yes. I can't. Actually, I can still dunk a I'm 55, by the way. I can still dunk a basketball. Most people can't at 55. But there are a lot of things I still can't do. However,
Hi, I'm Greg Boyson. I'm the host of Inside Personal Growth, and I want to welcome Thais Gibson. She owns the Personal Development School, and she is sponsoring our podcast, and we are so pleased that she is. Now, she offers a program at the Personal Development School that I want to let you know a little bit about. She says the best relationship and lives don't just happen. You can make them happen. If you tried it at all and feel stuck, it might be due to your attachment style. This is the hidden force shaping your beliefs and behaviors. Thais Gibson at the Personal Development School has uncovered a method to transform your attachment style, helping you become your best self. With an all-access pass, you'll get on-demand courses, live webinars, and study groups for deep personal growth. And for my listeners, we're offering an exclusive 50% discount on the quarterly membership. That's just $149 every 3 months. Find the link in the show notes, and the discount will apply at checkout. Start transforming your relationships today. Thanks for listening to Inside Personal Growth. And please go to the Personal Development School, Thais Gibson, to learn more about your personal attachment style. Well, welcome back to another episode of Inside Personal Growth. Joining us, as I said, is Dr. Ian Smith from his limo. I appreciate him giving us that. He said, no, that was the 90s. I said, no, it seems like it is today. I don't know what it is. But we're going to be speaking about his book, Eat Your Age, Feel Younger, Be Happier, Live Longer. Dr. Smith, good day to you. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm excited to talk to you. And this isn't a limo. uh, this is just a vehicle, but I'm here and I'm present and I'm ready to talk to you.
Hey, I love the fact that you're here and you're present. The most thing that each of us can do is listen intently to one another. And I think I've honed those skills after 17 years and 1,180 podcasts. So let's see how I do here. I want to do an introduction, though, so that they know a little bit about you. Dr. Ian Smith is the author of the #1 New York Times best-selling book called Shred the Revolutionary Diet and Super Shred, the Big Results Diet, and the Blast the Sugar Out, which that's a tough one for most people, Ian. Ian's highly anticipated newest book, when this was written, was Clean 20, but obviously we're beyond Clean 20. We're now to Eat Your Age, which is the New York Times bestseller. He was appointed by President Obama to the second term as the prestigious President's Council on Fitness. And again, Obama is not there anymore, but it's good for everybody to know that I sure wish he was still there. Damn it. And because now we got to deal with a guy who's not physically fit at all. It's my podcast show. I can say what I want. He's a former co-host of the Emmy Award-winning syndicated talk daytime talk show, The Doctors. He also served as a medical diet expert for 6 seasons on VH1's highly rated Celebrity Fit Club, and is the creator and founder of National Health Initiatives, the 50 million pound challenge, and the Makeover Mile. He's a former medical correspondent for NBC News Network and for News Channel 4 in New York. He's been on Oz, he's been on Harvey, he's been on Larry King Live, he's been on Anderson Cooper 360, and the list goes on. And he is definitely, if you want to learn more, just go to driansmith.com. There you can learn about all of his books. You can learn more about him. But it's an honor to have you on. And look, you wrote 21 books, and they're not all about nutrition. Some of these are, I was looking at them, different kinds of novels that you wrote. You're quite the writer, though. So, what inspired you right now at this moment in time in history? Because we all go through cycles, right? And we look at things, we evaluate them, to write this book called Eat Your Age. And why do you feel this book is really so important for my listeners?
I wanted to write this book several years ago. I had the concept as I was studying and aging myself, but I was learning that not only was my body changing and people I knew, their bodies were changing, but our needs were changing and how we responded to stimuli, whether it be food or exercise, that changed. And so several years ago, I wanted to write this book. I went to my editor at the time, and my editor said to me, we don't think this is a book. We think this is a magazine article. And I said, what? I mean, what universe are you living in, right? What universe are you living in? So it didn't happen several years ago. I finally convinced my new editor that this is a really important trove of information, particularly for people starting in their 30s. It's not just for people who are old, per se. It's for people starting in their 30s and trying to figure out what is it that I can do to be able to live a happier, healthier, longer, and higher quality of life. And I think those are important things that all of us want. No one ever said, no one ever says, I want to be unhappy. I want to be sick. I want to, have a short lifespan. Like,
Right.
so regardless of where you're from, what your income level is, what your politics are, it doesn't matter. Those are commonalities that we share. And so I really wanted to write a book that said to people, these are the things you can do in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s or your 60s plus that really will give you a better quality of life. Listen, at the end of the day, no matter how rich we are, no matter how healthy we all are going to transition out from this life.
We're all going to die at some point. And when we looked at our finitude, that is an issue that you start to think about, especially when you get to be my age. You say, oh, okay, do I want to live these years with a high quality of life? And, everybody out there, including Tony Robbins, and Dr. Robert Herrera, Peter Diomedes, they've all written books on longevity. I mean, I mean, let's face it, the whole concept here, even Dan Buettner on the Blue Zones, it's about longevity. And they say, so you start the book off by telling stories about people who've defied their age, meaning they've lived longer than normally would have statistically been possible. You also mentioned the work in your book by Buettner and Dr. Pollan. So he's also the guy that's been working with microdosing drugs. I just had a guy on here who was speaking about psychedelics for everyone. Uh, you have all this work that you've extensively done around lifestyle required to really live to what people would say 100 and beyond. I just heard a story about a man. He was 114. And I was like, geez. And this guy was ex-military guy, lived through the military. And it was like, I was just kind of blown away by the whole thing. And he was talking on the news. He actually was like cognizant at 114. Can you tell the listeners about what those ingredients are to stay healthy? Because we've heard this all about in our golden years. You know, a lot of my listeners out there realize, they'll say they go into a doctor's office and he'll have a plaque up or something that'll say, the only thing golden about the golden years is the color of your urine, right? And so I always like to say, hey, Ian, how do the people listening who are currently 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, because you give all these great tips and advice on what we should eat at these different age levels, help them live better, healthier lifestyles?
Let me start off by saying that getting old is inevitable,
Right.
but feeling old is not. And that's what I seek to do with Eat Your Age. I seek for people to realize that as they age, that their functioning can be still high, that their enjoyment can be still high, that their engagement in things that they've enjoyed historically can still be there. Aging is not a resignation to a dramatic change in your life and your happiness. What Buettner and many others, by the way, in the longevity space have found is that there are common traits to people who tend to live longer and a better quality of life. And I'm going to say a few things in no particular order, but one thing is Mediterranean style of eating. By that, we mean less processed foods, more unsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. Remember, the unsaturated is the good, the saturated is the bad. So, more unsaturated mono and polyunsaturated fats in your diet is critical. More whole grains. Okay. The power of whole grains from protein to fiber to vitamins and other nutrients is tremendous. So they tend to eat more whole grains. There's also less added sugars. So all the processing we do with sugary drinks and sugary treats, in fact, new study just came out saying that only about 10% of our sugar should come, or 10% of our calories should come from sugar, and that most Americans are eating triple that on a daily basis. And it also found, by the way, that sugary sweets tend to be more health negative impactful than actually a sweet treat. And that's a whole other conversation. It has to do with kind of satiety, that is how you're satisfied. Your absorption rate is faster with sugary drinks. They tend to have other chemicals, whatever. But the point is that reducing the amount of sugar that we consume, increasing the amount of whole grains, increasing the amount of non-animal fats, non-animal protein, like legumes, chickpeas, beans, lentils are important, but also lean fish is important, and fatty fish, by the way. So fatty fish like mackerel or salmon, full of omega-3s, which have been found to be essentially good for your brain, could have a cardio or heart protective effect. These are some of the common things that people who have lived longer have had in common. Here's two other things, though, by the way. They also tend to be more engaged in community. Okay. So, not living in isolation by themselves without communicating with others. They tend to have a good community around them, but they also tend to also find engagement and find pleasure, whether it's exercising, reading, walking, talking, whatever it is, they have a daily dose of pleasurable activities. So those are some of the things that many people who are in the longevity space have found to be common and those who live longer.
Well, and I'd like to add to that, and I think this whole concept. I just did an interview with Dr. Adam Dose. You're talking about the loneliness epidemic. I think that, you know, as a society, the more people give, meaning get involved with a charity, do something, get out there. And when you see these older people, when you say older people my age, who are actually involved, I have a nonprofit, Compassionate Communications. I help the homeless. I go out on the streets and give out sleeping bags, and I give away money. I give away gift cards. It makes you feel good. So the oxytocins that are released into your systems, the endorphins that are released into your systems. And this by no means a commercial, but I'm just saying be active and do something that makes you feel good. Like give back somewhere. And you mentioned in the book you have these top 10 power nutrients. Now, we discuss these nutrients. A lot of people take supplements. They do a green drink in the morning. Like me, I'll just use myself as an example. I use carrots, I use celery, I use kale in a drink in the morning, and that's what I have. That's basically what I do. I've also been vegetarian and or vegan for the last 35 years. Now, I do recognize that some people don't want to go to that. So could you tell the listeners about what nutrients they'll get when they're eating these foods, plus the supplements that they may want to consider?
Yes. So the Eat Your Age book breaks down for every decade, what are your top 10 nutrients for that decade? Uh, Once again, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s plus. It doesn't mean those are the only nutrients you need to consume, by the way. But the way I looked at it was when you look at, there's also a chapter about what diseases are lurking for your decade. So there are different disease entities and conditions that are most common during certain decades of our life. And so I kind of mapped over what are these illnesses, what are the changes going on in our body at each decade, and then what is the food nutrient that can address these issues? So that's kind of how I mapped out these top 10 nutrients. Um, Obviously, the book explains all the nutrients. I won't get into it here, but let me just give you some examples of some of these types of nutrients. For example, someone who is in their 30s really needs to pay attention to calcium. Calcium is really important for building our bone stock and for our teeth. And when you are in your 30s and even younger, but particularly in your 30s, you begin to reach your maximal bone density, right? Why is bone density important? The thinner your bones, something called osteopenia, or even a severe condition called osteoporosis, where your bone is extremely brittle and you end up having easy fractures. Those kind of things can be very problematic later in life. And so, what you want to do is consume a lot of calcium earlier in your life because calcium is important for mineralization of your bone. And when you do that, you're building a good bone stock. You're almost like taking out insurance so that as you age and your bones will inevitably demineralize and become thinner, at least you're starting with nice, healthy bone stock so that when you have the diminution, you don't get to a point where you are in severe risk of fracture. Let me give you a current example. Nancy Pelosi, 84 years old, is over in Luxembourg on tour with a congressional delegate. She supposedly is walking up or down, which direction, some steps at a palace. She has a terrible fall. She fractures her hip, and she is now sitting in a military hospital over there, after going hip surgery. Okay. These are the types of falls and situations that kill a lot of older people. Um, and so the idea is, how do you reduce the risk for hip fractures? One of the ways you reduce it is by having really good, strong bone stock. Something, by the way, you can continue to do even into your 80s if you are participating in the right exercises and if you've built that up by having good calcium earlier. So anyway, that's an example of one of the nutrients. As you get older, more people need protein. So protein becomes important in your 50s and your 60s plus. Why? One of the big parts of protein is helping us build muscle. Why do we need muscle as we age? We need muscle as we age because our body naturally undergoes muscle atrophy. That means a diminution of your musculature. You become more flaccid. You become flabbier. Everyone knows that. And so your muscle to fat ratio starts decreasing and you stop having more muscle and you start having more fat. And this becomes a problem for several reasons. One, muscle, by the way, is more metabolically active, which means that your muscles actually keep your metabolism up and you want a higher metabolism. Number two, muscles are important for stability. The ability to walk for Nancy Pelosi, to be able to walk in these 4-inch stilettos that she's known for, and to be able to navigate a curb or steps, that requires muscle. And if you don't have good muscle around your joints, that becomes a problem in stability. Lastly, joint pressure. The older we get, the more our joints start to hurt for a numerous amount of reasons and diseases. But muscles can help relieve, proper musculature and ratios can help relieve some of that pain that you may be experiencing in your joint. So as we age, we need to have good muscles. I'm not saying you have to be Hercules and have these bulging muscles, but I'm saying The old idea that older people don't need to have muscles is completely a fallacy. It is not true. And the one thing I would advise people as they age, cardiovascular work, like walking and running and bicycling, swimming, all those things are great. But the one thing I think that Americans in particular are really
Weights.
is lifting weight.
Yeah.
You have to lift weights. And when I say lifting weights, I don't mean going into the gym and lifting 3 pounds.
Right.
You have to lift weights to challenge your muscle, to build your muscle, to keep it active. So
Right.
whether it's protein, fiber, vitamin C, D, magnesium, potassium, all these top nutrients are listed for whatever decade you're in because of what you can expect to see physiologically in your body as you age.
Well, I agree with you. And looking at somebody myself who's 70 and I go to the gym and I lift weights that push me and then I go in the sauna for half an hour and then I take a cold shower. Now, the reality is that not everybody's going to do that. And I wanted to discuss with you the issues that as we age, I think most people battle with, and that's weight gain. Now, weight overall, I just heard a statistic last night. Since these drugs like Ozempic have come out and all these others, they've done a study of 170,000 people, and they've found that the BMI this last year did drop minimally, minimally from a kind of a nationwide basis if they looked at the statistic. I think there's a lot of emphasis put on BMI. The biggest issue is I'm not saying these drugs are dangerous because I don't know. What I do know is that if you watch what you eat and you exercise, and even though you might get a little chunkier as you go down the road a piece, you can do what I would call a scan. So I just had a scan done, right? And it was noted in the scan, Dr. Smith, that I have, because I'm an avid cyclist, developed additional arteries. Arteries, which literally, they said actually it was a lot. So, in other words, to help you prevent you from having a heart attack, you literally, with exercise, will have these ancillary arteries that will form, correct? So,
Mhm.
what I tell people is, if you stay active and you eat right, and as you said, sugars is a big issue for everybody. I mean, you've written so many books about sugar. It's super addicting. What would you tell the listeners today about not only your 30-day meal plan, but also the food choices that we should be making and ways that you would say, hey, you don't need Ozempic. You can do this without the drug.
Let me start this way. In Eat Your Age, it's not a weight loss program. It's a healthy life program. However, if you do follow the 30-day meal plan and Eat Your Age, most people, and do the exercise, they're going to lose some weight. No question about it. And I purposely customize each decade with a meal plan. So after your 30s, you have your meal plan, 40s, 50s, 60s plus. So it's an individualized meal plan because I'm trying to incorporate into that meal plan what those top nutrients are that you need. So I believe that if the vast majority of people follow that type of meal plan, they're not going to need, by the way, all these different vitamins. There's no question about it. They're not going to need it. In fact, there was a study years ago that showed that almost 70% of people who are taking multivitamins don't even need them. That eating not even the even not even eating not even the healthiest daily meal regimen, you're still getting plenty of what you need from a nutritional standpoint. But we're kind of caught up in this hype about needing supplements, needing extra vitamins, and that's not all true. A lot of that is marketing. But that being said, my approach to Eat Your Age is trying to get people to be able to consume nutrients in a very affordable fashion, in a simple fashion, in a tasteful fashion, so they can combat potential ravages that occur as we age. Also, my goal is that if people were to follow a plan where the food is tasty and affordable and the recipes are simple, which is also, by the way, I wrote a companion book called the Eat Your Age Official Recipe Book. It's 150 recipes that incorporates all these different nutrients that people should check it out. Very simple recipes, very affordable, very simple.
We'll put a link to that.
Yes, but I wrote that because I wanted people to realize that having the understanding of what your best exercises are for your decade of life, what your top nutrients are, and then putting that all together into recipes that you can make at home or with your family, that takes the place of needing all of these external interventions, which leads me to these GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic. These medications, which were not designed for weight loss, by the way, they were designed for diabetes, were found to have as a side effect weight loss implications. But here's the trick. Here's a trick that no one talks about that really blows my mind. These weight loss drugs are really low-calorie diets in disguise, because what these drugs do is they suppress your appetite. Well, when you suppress your appetite, what do? You eat less. So people are losing weight not because the medication is going into your fat stores and burning your fat, and that's not what it's doing. The medication is going into your brain and telling your brain that you are full. And therefore your brain says, okay, my satiety center in my brain says, I'm full, I won't eat. So whereas people were consuming maybe 2,400 calories in a day, they're now consuming 1,700 calories, 1,500 calories. Guess what? You don't have to be a mathematician. If you go from consuming 2,400 calories to 1,700 calories, you now have a nice deficit of 700 calories. You are going to lose weight if everything else stays the same. No question about it. But here's the danger. Here's the danger. What people don't understand, by the way, these GLP-1 agonists do one more thing I'll mention, is that they slow what's called the gastric emptying time. The amount of time that your food leaves your stomach and goes into your small intestines is called the gastric emptying time. It slows it down, and by slowing it down, guess what happens? You feel full longer, and so you're not going to eat. Okay. So we understand how these things are really working. They're not magical. People are just eating less calories. But here are the two major dangers. One is that it has been shown that when people stop using these medications, and if they have not changed their lifestyle, eating healthier foods, less processed foods, less sugars, and exercising, if they don't change those fundamental behavioral lifestyle issues, guess what? They gain all that weight back, and then some, right? Okay.
You're right.
Here's the other part they don't want to talk about. There is a long list of potential side effects with these medications, and no one wants to talk about it. Everything from diarrhea to nausea to gallbladder issues. I mean, headache. There's a long list of side effects that people have experienced, and I've talked to people who have experienced these, but in the public domain, everyone just keeps talking about the benefits of the weight loss. And so I would caution people that if you are going to try one of these GLP-1 agonists, and if your decision, and they work, but don't get me wrong, they're effective. But if you are going to do it, this is my advice to you. Do it as a jump start to get yourself, it's a nice little kickstart. However,
don't get dependent.
That's right. You must also change your exercise and movement patterns and your dietary patterns, and then transition off of the drug. And now that you have these new lifestyle habits, you now can stay that way forever.
That's a very good explanation of how those drugs work. But the key there that you said was this brain that says, hey, I'm satiated, I'm not satiated. And if you were to advise somebody who said, no, I don't want to take Ozempic to do this, but I want to. Now, I know that probably 80% of the people listening to this are literally right now, they're not hydrated, right? And I've always been told, well, if you want to eat less, drink a couple of glasses of water before you go do every meal. Now, the reality is we all need to be hydrated. We're all probably, I think, most people are dehydrated. If you said right now, go get a blood test and you went down to the nurse, you'd go, holy crap, I can't find your vein. You're like, oh, okay, right. So, do you have any tips for people so that this satiation thing up here goes, oh, good, I'm full. I don't need that extra helping of pasta. I don't need that extra helping of bread. Because I think really, Ian, that's where most people get in trouble. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go back for seconds. First weren't enough.
Yes. First of all, you are absolutely correct. I think that a lot of people are walking around in a dehydrated state and don't realize it. People tend to think that dehydration is only the result that's experienced when you've been sweating profusely, when you're out in the hot sun or working out, that that's the only way to lose water. The body loses water in several ways. It loses it through breathing, it loses it through elimination, and it loses it through the pores in your skin, even when you're not sweating. So we are constantly losing water. The body is at least 70% water. And I asked my kidney physiology professor, medical, I'll never forget that. I asked my professor, how did you guys decide it was 8 cups of water a day that we need to stay hydrated? And you know his answer to me was? He says, Ian, they made that up at a bar somewhere. I said, what? He said, when that number first came out, there was no real scientific evidence as to why the number was 8 versus 10 versus 6. They just made that number out. Some guy sitting around made the number out. However, this
How'd
is
they
what we
come up? Ian, so how'd they come up with 96 ounces or your weight, your body weight? Because a lot of times they'll say, hey, drink your body weight. And you'll go, okay, so that's, I got to drink 190 ounces.
no. This is what you need. This is what you need. You need to drink enough to replace the amount of water that you are losing on a daily basis to keep your water levels in a homeostatic, in a maintenance level. That's what you want to do. So, what is that number? There is no one singular number for everybody. That number is based on how you lose water. Some people are very active. They may live in higher climates. They may be losing hotter climates. They may be losing water faster than someone who is not in the same kind of environment. So it's how much you lose. The average person probably loses, which means they need between 6 and 10 cups of water per day. Average. Not everyone needs 8. Some people need more than 8. Once again, it's about replacement of losses. And so that's really the way to gauge whether or not you're getting the right amount of water. This business of how much per weight, I mean, those are just kind of cheat sheet algorithms that people use. But what I'm telling you is I think that if you fall between 6 and 10 cups a day, that is extremely important. And you won't be as dehydrated. And one of the big problems people have is dehydration.
Well, and I think the key there too is satiation. In other words, once you
Yeah.
get enough water in your system, you're not going to be able to consume more food. So you'll automatically, your intake of caloric intake will be reduced. Now, look,
Well, hold on. But let me answer the second half of that, but I real fast, okay? Because you're right, the satiation. So if these drugs are tricking your brain to feel satiated or full, what can you do without using the drugs? And that's why I wrote Eat Your Age. These are the things you can do. One, you can eat more fiber. Fiber passes through your body in an undigested form, and therefore it increases the bulk inside of your gastrointestinal tract. So increase your fiber content.
so do we tell people to take like Metamucil or to take psyllium or,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. If you're not, if I prefer you get it through food. The average person should be consuming between 25 and 30 grams of fiber per day. There are plenty of ways through food. And in the book, I lay out what foods are high in fiber that you should go to. But there are plenty of ways to do it naturally. If you need to have help, I understand that. Looking for a fiber supplement can be helpful. No question about it. But I prefer things the more natural way. Number 2, eat more protein. Protein takes more work for the body to digest. and therefore it sticks around longer. This gets into making your body feel full longer. So fiber and protein are ways to keep your body feeling full longer, which means that you don't have the impulse to continue to eat. You mentioned one that I mentioned in all my books, by the way, my diet books, and that is to consume more water. So one of the tips I give my followers is I say, before every meal, assuming you're eating 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, you must finish 1 cup of water, because the stomach works on what's called volumetric extension, which means that when you have your stomach, and when your stomach starts stretching as you eat and it's growing, there are receptors inside of the lining of your stomach that get triggered when you stretch. And it sends a message to your brain saying, whoa, slow down, I'm getting full. And eventually, when you're stretched enough, those receptors send a message up here that say, that's it, I've reached my capacity. Well, it's all about volume. Your stomach doesn't care if it's being stretched by water, by food, whatever it is. It doesn't care. It's just being stretched. So think about it. If you can do some initial stretching with water that has no calories, then you have less room in your stomach for the high calorie foods that are coming in, which means you'll be eating less. So
Where do you sit in on these hydration supplements that are sold that you throw into the water and it's supposed to keep you more hydrated? Just curious what you feel about those things, because I tell you, they're selling like crazy.
you know what? One day I'm going to have some fun. I'm going to create the craziest idea of a thing and claim that it has all these powers and see if I can sell it. I really believe, this is the truth. Listen to this. Listen to this. I believe that the consuming public, that when they hear something that on the face of it sounds ridiculous or that they can't understand it, they are more inclined to actually believe it, because they say, well, if this sounds so crazy, whoever came up with this, they must know what they're talking about, because it doesn't make sense otherwise, and I just don't understand it. It's crazy. No,
They're
I
good
don't.
marketers, though. I mean, you
Yeah,
go down to Costco and you can see all this hydration supplement stuff in little packets. And I tell you, I don't know how many carts I saw with people doing that. There you go. You're drinking your water. So look, you have exercises, and I think this is the flip side of this. There's a lot of people that get to be on my age. They lose their balance, they lose their strength, they lose their endurance, just like what you said. And you have QR codes in the book on how to do exercises properly. Um, and I know this is a big deal because somebody who just starts back into the gym again, and I don't care what kind of equipment, if it's Matrix or which one it is, a lot of times they don't use it properly. Then they strain a muscle and then they feel bad and then they can't go back in and they're going to wait and whatever. Can you speak about the core exercises and the high impact exercises that the listeners could do that would make them healthier overall? And I think more importantly, those QR codes to watch the darn videos so that you know you're doing them right. Because most people do not hire a trainer. They're just going to go in, they're going to go to their local fitness place, whatever the name of it is, and they're literally just going to start and they're going to strain some muscle and they're going to go, oh shit, I can't go back.
listen, I am passionate about fitness and exercise. Passionate. In fact, if you said to me as a physician, there is only one thing that you can prescribe in order to be healthier, only one thing, I would say exercise. Now, here's the thing. Here's the caveat. You are correct. Too many people try to do this without help or training. And I agree. Everyone can't afford a trainer, by the way. They just can't afford it. The reality of it. I have created videos with my partner, a fitness partner. We've created videos on our app.
And we're here. They're in the book.
Yes. My partner and I created these videos on an app that's free. It's called funfitnessbros.com. You can download it for free. And we do all these different workouts that you can do at home or in a gym. And the idea is to at least try to give people some type of free video instruction on how to perform these exercises and what exercises can be helpful. But this is also what I want to say to people is that there are a range of helpful and healthy exercises, all the way from body weight exercise, which means no equipment, just your body. So jumping jacks, sit-ups, push-ups, running in place, all body weight exercise, and there are many, many more, of course. All the way from that to using resistance bands, which can be very helpful, by the way. That helps your muscle. Yes.
Please help people with those. I was just going to mention to you, and I know this is a side note, right? Okay. People get older, something happens. So I'll just say this is part, and I know there's hundreds, if not thousands of listeners who relate to this. So I got hit by a dog in the dog park. He's about 120 pounds and he knocked me on my ass. Are you there, Ian?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you see me?
Yeah, no, your video left. You put your video. There we go. And so I'll start over. I got hit by a dog in a dog park, tore meniscus. Okay. So go to the PT. I don't want to go do knee surgery. Orthopedic guys automatically, they just want to run down the road like we're going to do that. I have no prolotherapy. So I find this prolotherapy, which is it's dextrose and something else, and it's helping a lot, right? And norepinephrine or whatever it is, some kind of little bit of pain thing. The point is when an older person gets an injury like that, and they feel like, hey, it's really even hard to like walk or do whatever, they need something. So the point I was saying is, I say, hell, well, instead, now I'll just go to the gym more often because I can't do the running, but I can do the cycling, right? And so I think what happens is people freeze frequently when there's pain like that. What would you tell them about how important these videos are? Because damn it, if you can have these videos and strengthen those muscles, your propensity toward an injury like that is reduced so much more because your muscles are stronger.
Let me start with a story. I was on the plane the other week, and a woman is luggage from the carry-on or overhead, okay? Was trying to take her carry-on. And she is struggling. She is struggling. I mean, she's probably in her late 60s, but she just is moving and, anyway, no one's helping her. I was too far back. I'm looking at this from several rows back. I couldn't get to her. She finally gets it off. And I thought she was going to clobber herself in the head with this carry-on. So then she's walking up the jet bridge and she's bent over and her gait is unsteady. She's leaning, all these things. And I'm sitting there saying to myself, this is a prime example of someone who is not old. She's probably in her 60s. She's not old. Who, however, from a physiological standpoint, she's old. She is in pain. She is weak. She has poor daily functioning, doing things that she should do. And a lot of that, and I don't know a personal story, but I'm thinking here, a lot of that could have been alleviated had she had stronger bones and had more calcium, had she been doing resistance training, okay, and increasing her muscle mass. A lot of the injuries that she was being afflicted with, no question in my mind, is because she just allowed her body to go. There's not. And so my advice to people as they age in the book is do not resign yourself to physical maladies. It's not necessary, by the way. Sure, I can't run as fast as I did in my 20s. Yes. I can't. Actually, I can still dunk a I'm 55, by the way. I can still dunk a basketball. Most people can't at 55. But there are a lot of things I still can't do. However, there are tons of things I can still do, and I don't get injured because I now listen to my body. I now use the correct form. Too many people are trying to exercise, which is good that they have intentions, but they're doing it in the wrong way, where they're either hurting themselves or they're not exercising in a way to get the benefit from. So these videos in the book, the QR codes, will take people to be able to do exercises right at home in their living rooms, all the way to if they go to the gym. Hey guys, here's some machines you should use, and this is how you should use it. It's all about creating not just knowledge, but safety around the execution of the exercise.
So go to funfitnessbros.com. That's where these people can pick that up. Now, I'm kind of wrapping our interview up because I know you got to get your limousine and move on out. Um, what look, you've given people QR codes to videos. You're helping them understand the diet at various decades, right, of their life, 30s, 40s, 50s. And I went through all of these. You've got a diet or you got a cookbook. And I really want to stress that because this is really recommendations, but the cookbook along with this would just be phenomenal because now you've got something that you can follow. If you were to leave these listeners right now who've been listening to us for the last 40 some odd minutes with 3 big tips to defy age, stay healthy and happier, right? And live longer, what might those 3 tips be that you would just say, hey, if you do these things, hopefully things are going to go better for you?
Perfect. I love it. Easy. Number 1, commit yourself to 30 minutes of movement, 5 days a week of movement. Part of that 30 minutes has to be resistance training, either bands or weights. 15 minutes of those 30 minutes, not more than that. So 150 minutes of movement every week, at least. Okay. You can increase it. More is fine, but at least that every week. Number 2, spend at least 30 to 60 minutes a day on pure pleasure, where you're doing something for you that brings you unfettered joy, whatever that is, reading, walking, gardening, being with your grandkids, whatever it is.
Massages, yoga,
Anything.
whatever.
Whatever makes you happy. This sounds strange, but the vast majority of people do not spend 60 minutes a day on themselves for pleasure. They don't do it, by the way. So that is extremely important. The last thing I would say is this: consume 70% of your calories as plant-based.
Yeah.
I'm not a vegan or vegetarian, though that's completely fine if you are, that's great. But if you're someone who is not going to be a vegan or vegetarian, 3/4 approximately of your plate should be comprised of plant-based foods. Okay? If you do those 3 things, 70% plant-based, moving 150 minutes a week, really moving, by the way, not just kind of lollygagging, but get your heart rate up, get your lungs working, 150 minutes a week, and then you find pleasure in something every single day for at least an hour. That's going to be changing for a lot of people.
I would say one of the bigger ones, honestly, I know the weightlifting is really important and I want to stress that, but that bringing joy to your life for 60 minutes, I think has as much an impact as almost anything. And when you look at Buettner's studies and you look at Poland's studies and your studies and everybody, it, honestly, it's community. It's being in community. It's having some level of spiritualness. I didn't say religion, but your level of spirituality, your connection with a higher power and belief, your willingness to give back in some way and be connected, lifting weights, drinking water, eating 70% plant-based, whatever that is. If you roll all those up into a ball and you said, hey, look, I could do those for all my listeners, it's in this book, Eat Your Age, and the cookbook, which we'll put a link to as well, which he says he has all these diets. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go out and buy it after I finish hanging up here on this podcast. But Dr. Smith, pleasure having you on Inside Personal Growth. I'm glad I caught you before the limo took off and or before you started the engine, one or the other. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Listen, January 6th, I'm doing a virtual boot camp that's free for people who want to change lives. So if you send me an email, Eat Your Age, the title of the book, at gmail.com and say, hey, Dr. Ian, I want to be on your virtual boot camp where I can do it via Zoom. Join me. I'm trying to help, my partner and I are trying to help people for the first 60 days of January to be able to eat better and move better in a safe and healthy way.
So January 6th, What time is that? You're in Central Time Zone. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's when it starts, but it's all online, so it's virtual. So
Okay.
it's
Okay.
if you send me an email, eatyourage@gmail.com, and I will send you the instructions on how to join our online virtual boot camp, and you're all set to go.
We will actually put a link to that in this blog entry. People have heard it, but they don't always do. So down below on our YouTube, you'll see that link at eatyourage@gmail.com to sign up for the January 6th boot camp. We appreciate you. Namaste to you, my friend. Thanks for everything that you've done in the past, what you continue to do. And oh, by the way, you certainly don't look 55. So have a wonderful holiday season.
You too. Enjoy the conversation. You take care. Stay healthy.
Okay. Thank you for listening to this podcast on Inside Personal Growth. We appreciate your support. And for more information about new podcasts, please go to InsidePersonalGrowth.com or any of your favorite channels to listen to our podcast. Thanks again, and have a wonderful day.